Welcome back to the show. Today, I want to talk about a very specific type of stress that not many talk about when they're financially literate. There is a burden about being the responsible one in your family or friend group. You spend years educating yourself, learning about investing, budgeting. You've lived a completely different lifestyle than others and didn't fall for that Instagram lifestyle, that travel lifestyle, that consumption. And the moment you start seeing your investment accounts start with a few extra commas and your future looks pretty solid, and better than that, it looks predictable. You basically become a target for everyone else's financial chaos and problems. Suddenly, people start looking at you not as a friend, but as a solution. They see your progress and they think, if he can do it for me. People don't just want your advice, they want the results you have without taking the work and time to commit to it. And I get it. You get it. We love helping people. We want to offer that helping hand. There's a dangerous aspect between it, offering some people guidance and others expecting for you to carry them to achieve their financial goals. Some people ask you what you think about a certain stock they've heard. Someone else might ask how to manage your savings. And a friend might casually mention they're struggling with that and ask, what would you do in their situation? And at first, it feels good. It feels pretty meaningful to help people. Sharing knowledge is pretty satisfying for most people. It gives a purpose for all those hours you spent learning these things that most people didn't really care about in their early life. And I've had people come up to me wanting to know the secret investment, but they don't want to do the work behind learning all about it and why that choice was made. They want me to tell them exactly where to put their money so they can make as much money as I did in a few months. Wow, it took me years and years. They want me to solve their problem. However, I cannot possibly make them as much money as I made for myself because I am not you and you are not me. You've lived a life completely different with different choices. Your life position on things are completely different than mine. We have different sets of skills in life, and you cannot possibly get to my level by just a couple months of reading books or watching YouTube's online. I can share the words and ideas and concepts that changed my life and helped me, but those words won't be enough to pay your bills or even get a full understanding of the financial world. We know that financial outcomes are very personal. You live a certain way, you've chosen to develop a certain skill set, you learn specific things, chosen a career path. Your risk tolerance is completely different, and so much is dependent on your life experiences and personality. Sure, there are things that people have in common to have greater chances of achieving financial success. You've probably followed some along the way, even by just listening to this podcast or any financial podcast. You literally just added an extra layer of complexity to your future success, because we both know how important money is in our lives. Because to us, we need to make it a priority, like a real one that isn't just posting random inspirational quotes or talking about it in a broad way. You probably won't suffer from sudden wealth syndrome where you suddenly come across a large sum of money because you won the lottery or a lawsuit. You know each dollar that you get was a result of something that you did or prepared to receive. And this is pretty hard to describe to people who deny that money is earned, even if it seems that it came out of nowhere. You understand that the stock market isn't magic and it takes so much time and research to even make money in it. While others don't have the knowledge for it, will just see money going up and down without reason. They don't see our little head burning up from constantly worrying and thinking about what our money is doing or not doing, to the point where it's hard to separate money from our lives. Most people would say that it's unhealthy, which I think it is unhealthy. However, to me, and maybe you, I don't see another way of living. Growing up without money, all you can really think about is the lack of money. So once you start getting better with money, all you can think about is money. If you stop thinking about it and transfer all that worry to another person, you start transferring their responsibility and it leads to bad circumstances. Even top investors either manage their own portfolio or still heavily involved in their wealth management with a company. One way I also like to put it is that all you're learning is money oriented. Everything you start learning and start thinking about numbers, and you'll start to make connections on events that impact the economy. And this takes time to develop. And you can help family and friends develop this skill with just conversation about world events and other ways of thinking about them. Because advanced financial topics and basic ones all serve the same importance, even if it seems so irrelevant. Because maybe you specialize in tech or some other type of industry or stay away from certain industries completely. And that's why people are very good with specialized, very specific investments, but they're still generalists in the way that they understand the rest of the financial industries and instruments to a certain level. This seems very hard and complex for most people, so they start to trust others, including financial advisors or friends like me and you, to deliver the actual information and their decisions. However, if you solve their problems today without them learning the reasoning and logic behind it, you're literally setting up for a big disaster in the near future. Because at the end of the day, they only care about their money and you care about your own money. If you're willing to trust someone with your money and you don't understand what they're doing with it, you're not really investing. You're literally just trusting others with your money. You're leaving yourself open to being scammed and exploited like you hear about in the news. If you find yourself in a position like that, you have two choices. You either educate yourself until you understand why they are making these decisions, or you educate yourself to the point where you can manage your own investments with confidence. Because if I tell you what stocks to buy and which ones will go up and you didn't learn anything, you just learned to depend on me, then you'll start to learn to blame me for all these bad decisions in the market. And a lot of people don't understand the amount of education you really need to grasp all these concepts. And it's not just about talking about university type of education. You can get that information from YouTube, books, and other sources online. It's just the sheer amount of information needed to even remotely be equipped to handle a variety of financial situations. People think that 50 books ought to do it, but that's not going to get you very far. The books might cover the basics, and probably depending on the books, if they're outdated or really new, they leave out strategies that, sure, they might not work today anymore. But the more advanced ones, you might probably be like, okay, I can blend these with old ones. And that goes another way around. Everything you learn is all about history and modernism and mixing them together to create a strategy that works for you and isn't just another copycat strategy that you don't really understand or feel confident in. When you hear people online talking about how they didn't go to school and are making thousands of dollars trading only a couple hours a week, and I'm not saying that's not possible, but that is extremely highly improbable. You cannot believe that kind of stuff, especially if they're selling a course, a book, and they're basically their whole life they've just been an influencer. The education you need is kind of boring, and even I sometimes get bored of it and read or see videos in small chunks because it's pretty dry, but I still need that information. And the hard part about being good with money is getting put in a different category that people think you don't get what it's like to not be good with money or to not have money. They'll start to tell you you're part of the problem that is keeping people poor and not helping others by donating to these communities. To me, this is pretty wild. I see this in pretty much people who haven't earned large sums of money. They think it's simple and didn't take much effort. They start to show their jealousy, envy, and really start to project their financial insecurities. They will always think to themselves, if I had that money, I would do this or that. I would help poor communities. I would even feed every person I see or tip 40% everywhere I go. And I say, they can do it if they put the massive amount of work it takes. Everything is possible for everyone, including you, because you don't need to be amazing with money. You really just need to be good with it, which isn't that high of a burden for most people. You shouldn't listen to the world saying it's hard for you to achieve a certain level of wealth, or that the world, the government is against you, because I don't personally believe that's true. Especially if you live in America, achieving wealth, if you're not born into it, is just as easy for the people around you in your city or even in your state. It's not impossible, just not as easy as people want it to be. This type of behavior you'll see the older people get, as they start to see their lives turn out not the way they imagined it to be or that they wanted to. So they desperately start wanting to live this good life that they see other people living on social media. And who knows how these people will be in their late 50s, 60s, who they'll start to blame, who will actually stay their friend if they keep pushing people away, asking for advice that they don't really want, and no one really know how their life will turn out. But what we do know is that I don't need to wonder if they'll be well off in terms of money. Because if you've offered help and they chose not to accept it or chose not to follow it, then that responsibility of that burden is no longer really yours, or it never was. Even if you didn't offer to help, you're still not responsible for them. You still carry some burden in your mind, especially if they were your friends or family. But like we know, everyone carries their own burdens in life. And it's not a magic thing to relieve someone of their financial burden. It's just trying to carry your own burden and helping others along the way to see if you'll achieve that magic number in your head or help others achieve theirs. Thank you for listening. Until next time.